Let's get to this Iran letter. I think it's instructive in so many ways, because even when you said, drawing these comparisons between, some of the kind of really rabid fringes in America and some of the real radicalism in a place like Iran, I got to tell you another kind of fascinating thing about this for me, especially as someone who's, pretty kind of anchored in the international stuff and has some familiarity with places like Iran. The other fascinating symmetry is that, guys like Zarif and people in the Iranian leadership who really are realists, and, you might disagree with any number of things they say, but they're realists, they're very rational players. They have a lot more.
Doesn't Zarif have a PhD or something in international? I mean, he's very well educated in international affairs.
The Rouhani government has more American PhDs and Western PhDs in it than the Obama administration. That's an interesting, fun fact about that government. But
probably more high school diplomas than the Republican Party.
Yeah, there's a lot of banning, Well, that's a whole other thing to ban. But I think it's a very interesting thing, and what this letter revealed with these 47 Republican senators really trying to. I mean, first they had Netanyahu try to basically have a foreign head of state come and hijack American foreign policy. These people all would have had aneurysms if Democrats invited Chirac to address Congress. I mean, they all would have lost their minds. I mean, they literally would have set the building on fire.
They would have charged them with treason. I'm quite sure.
Oh, there's no doubt.
They would have had them at Guantanamo.
There's no doubt. So I think the 2 points here that I want to raise that I think are just interesting takeaways from this are that in the domestic American sense, even as on the state level and even with this new Congress, we see this rabid, insane push. There are other areas, and now we're seeing it in foreign policy, where this glib, reflexive, far-rightism just isn't working in the same way. It's like all of a sudden what happened with marriage equality. Bash gay people and Democrats run scared on it. That's a winning issue. A couple years ago, do a whole horror story about Iran and exaggerate the capacity and say we can't have a deal. That's a winning issue. Well, all of a sudden, actually we can have a deal with them. And people see that. And people also recognize within Iran, if you have any interest in how that government works, they have their hardliners that don't want a deal. They have their rationalists that have been wanting a deal for longer than, even Democratic administrations have been serious about having a deal. So we're learning something new about international affairs, and then we're seeing another trope of the right get kind of laid bare. And we're going to wrap up in a few minutes, but I want your thoughts on those two happenings, because I think that they're very important, and I think they're connected to have a more sophisticated understanding of the world and our interests as actually practically expressed in them, and then the way in which these tropes on the right, whether on social issues or foreign policy or taxes, I think they're actually slowly dying on the vine.
Well, demographic change is leading to the fact that they're able to reach fewer and fewer people through their various puke funnels than they were able to in the past. I mean, the pipeline of Limbaugh, Fox News, NRA emails, National Right to Life scare tactics, the Chamber of Commerce. Younger people have a much more access to various channels, and the truth is that Air America may have been managed much like the Iraq War, but
that's what it sounds like from hearing Sam talk about it. It's like, wow.
But think of like this show and the 1,000 flowers that bloomed from that. All the different people that were involved in some way that are now out there doing great radio on the left or TV and MSNBC. Don't get me started on critiques there, but there are some great voices on there that now reach people, and many others, and obviously the online media. So while it's irony, as well, I was talking about the 90s as something that in some ways was great. It was also while the right was sort of had this enormous advantage, was building up. They had Fox News go online or on air in '96, and they had Drudge, and there was no way to respond, and so. The left was doing a lot of catch up, and that's part of it. Part of it's a demographic change. With Twitter and Facebook and all the different ways that you have access now to news going on somewhere else, or to where people can share information with you in a way. So these guys can't just sort of pipeline what gets to you in the way that they used to. And I think that and I think some of this stuff just wears out its welcome at some point, where it's just like, are you doing this? Even people have been manipulated before in Iraq or whatever. I mean, it's a new demon on the other side every 10 years, right? Who is it now? they're always looking for somebody because that's what unites the various wings of the Republican Party. The last time they all got along really well is when they had communism on the other side. So if it can either be, those Islamic people, or it can be Putin, or it can be whatever the hell it is, as long as they've got some common enemy, they feel like they can, unite these various factions. And I think even, look, the mainstream media, because they're being pushed by the left in a way they weren't in the past, they were only being pushed by the right, I think in some ways is forced to respond to this and respond in a way. I mean, the New York Daily News obviously called these guys traitors.
That was mind-blowing.
Which remember, people forget. The New York Daily News is run by Mort Zuckerberg, is a guy that was going to run potentially for the U.S. Senate from New York as a Republican. He's sort of he used to be a Democrat, but sort of a moderate-ish. And the New York Daily News endorsed Romney in 12. It is not a liberal paper.
Right.
It is you could call it moderate if you want to. But on top of that, the Wall Street Journal, and then local newspapers. You can see here, the Cincinnati Enquirer here in Cincinnati is very conservative, and they love themselves some Rob Portman. They ripped into him the other day, saying, that they like him usually because of his maturity. I'd argue with them on that, but okay.
Me too.
And that how could he sign this? And I think that's happened in a lot of. So
and that's
think
the
you're
point,
right.
is that they
a lot
totally missed the boat on it. They just assumed we can send this reckless, irresponsible, stupid, constitutionally questionable letter, and all we'll get from it is some good fundraising and some praise on the morning shows for being tough. And it's blowing up in their faces. And I think that really is... maybe I'm more optimistic in the context of this show than other people, but I'm not the most optimistic dude in the world. But to me, that is a big shift. And it's a product, too, going back to the beginning of our conversation as we wrap up. You mentioned empiricism. There's an empiricism to this, too. You can't just say that about, the state of Iran's nuclear program, because that's not true. And we know it from American and Israeli intelligence. It's wrong. We don't know the nature of it. It's ambiguous. That's why we're negotiating. And you can't just keep reasserting nonsense. And I think that there is just something different about that. And I take some encouragement from that. And I take encouragement.
I think it also helps. I'll say quickly that
Yeah.
some of the far right people that used to be in the mainstream media have been figured out.
Definitely.
And they've all had to run and hide at Fox, from Lou Dobbs
That's
to
right.
Tucker Carlson to people that to Judy Miller, and people that used to be far in other places where they could affect thought have now all gathered in the sewer that is Fox News. So that's kind of nice too.
That's exactly right. And let's just chase them off to WorldNet Daily, and we will succeed. Cliff, I also take encouragement from talking to you, buddy, and I hope you and I can catch up sometime soon. I really appreciate your time.